Ladies and gentlemen, behold the outcast, the creepy and depraved, the bizarre creations not meant for the normal world. Embrace the twisted weirdness of freak show cinema.
If you're like me, you were introduced to the book series, A Series of Unfortunate Events, through the 2004 film. If you're also like me, you're a fan of children sometimes being taught a little scary, deranged, downright disturbing tough love. This story of three children trying to escape a murdering egomaniac delightfully meets those checkmarks. But you might also be surprised, or I don't know if you read the books, maybe not, that this film is getting a little bit of a backlash. I haven't seen anybody hate it per se, but I have seen a lot of people dismiss it because of the Netflix series in 2017. I think this is kind of unfair. I don't love this movie and no, I haven't read the books, but having seen the Netflix series, I can certainly see the differences, but I honestly see more similarities. The look of the sets, the makeup, the grayscale, even some of the actors look really similar. The show is definitely better, it has more time to explore the story and characters, but going into this series completely blind, I found this film very dark and imaginative. So I wanted to defend this movie a little bit. Not do an old versus new per se, but yes, draw a few comparisons to the show and figure out why one is regarded so much higher than the other when they seem so eerily similar a good chunk of the time. Because truth be told, I think this movie deserves another look at. First of all, let's discuss why they're so similar. And if you're one of those people saying, oh, they're not similar at all, one is fantastic and one sucks balls, they were developed by the same person. Barry Sonnenfeld adored the books and was originally going to direct the film. But through, fittingly enough, a series of unfortunate events, producers were moved around, dropped out, and focus was shifted out of Sonnenfeld's comfort zone. I hear conflicting reports if he was asked to leave or if he left on his own account, but either way, he was certainly not happy with where the film was going. Sonnenfeld is still credited as producer though because so much of what he started is in the film, including storyboards and set designs. So yes, if you want to see his fully realized version, the show is the way to go. But for an hour 30 movie not including the credits, I thought they condensed 3 books down in a pretty clever way. From what I understand, the books are episodic and usually rely on a certain formula. The children live in a new location, their evil relative Count Olaf disguises himself to try and kill them, and a series of unfortunate events takes place resulting in Olaf's defeat but something valuable being lost, usually a person. In a movie, it's a little harder to pick up on this, especially when the climax is taken from an earlier scene in the book, which doesn't involve an Olaf disguise being unmasked. In the show though, it's a little easier to pick up on the formula because it repeats so much more. Now, that's not at all to discredit the show. From what I hear, that's a much better representation of the books. But as a movie, these are changes that are needed to make it flow as a cinematic 3-act structure. So I don't really think they're bad alterations, especially when you consider how quickly they had to introduce new characters. You technically don't get a ton of screen time with these folks, but you really feel like you know them by the end of their stories. This isn't just due to their tight and efficient writing, but also to the actors they chose. Both the movie and show have an excellent cast, but the movie has a tougher job. It has to get you to like or dislike these characters very quickly, where the show has a lot more time to build them up. Though I enjoy them both, I will admit, I do remember the cast in the movie a little better. I think because they knew they didn't have much time, they worked hard to make sure they left a strong impression. Sometimes a little too strong.
I think you might have to turn it up. Is anybody out there?
Okay, let's talk about people's probably biggest issue with the movie, Jim Carrey. This is bizarrely an uneven performance. Now, granted, that's nothing unusual for Carrey, but the way this one works is uniquely different. Carrey, for the first third of the movie, is pretty annoying.
Something, something, something. Music builds to a crescendo. Ending on the right foot.
Now, yes, Count Olaf is supposed to be annoying, but Carrey seems to just be doing his Carrey shtick of making faces and weird voices. This doesn't really feel like a fleshed out character, this feels more like Carrey trying to make us laugh by acting goofy.
Imagine my surprise!
I don't even know what this is.
Mini Kiki,
But then something interesting happens. At the end of the first act, where Olaf tries to kill them for the first time, we get this scene.
I'm going to get you no matter where you go, no matter what you do, I'll find you. You are so deceived.
For whatever reason, Carrie is legitimately good after this moment. I think it's because he can now openly be a threat. When Carrie has to play an over-the-top jerk, he goes so goofy it's not believable. Or in my opinion, that funny. When he has to play an over-the-top murderer, he's surprisingly both funny and intimidating. When the kids see through his first disguise, there's something so creepy about him clearly knowing he's caught, but still continuing the act.
Count Olaf.
Oh. Now, why would you say something like that?
The performance has a lot of little glances like this. Every time he does it, I swear he's gonna snap and lunge after them.
Do you have a hall pass? I didn't think so.
It's that terrifying mix of composed enough to deceive, but savage enough to crack. It's equally frightening both when he breaks character and stays in character.
It's Captain Shab. You're no Gordian. You just stay where you're at and we'll come where you're told.
Even when he returns as Olaf, his comedy really improves. Doing terrible things, but with pretty good one-liners.
Let her go!
Gladly. Let her go.
No!
Put a hold on that.
Where Neil Patrick Harris I buy more as the jerk than the killer, Carrie I buy more as the killer than the jerk.
Hello, hello, hello.
There's a lot to be said about it visually. The over-the-top look of both the movie and show are literally well illustrated in the books, which both versions try to replicate. Both try to build as much of their sets as possible, but the Netflix series seem to utilize more CG for grander landscapes. The film has a little bit more of a staged look, which not only gives an otherworldly yet artificial look to the cold reality that awaits them, but it also feels a lot more claustrophobic. It truly comes across that everything is closing in on them because it literally is. The ways they incorporate certain ideas from the book are very clever too. The film opens as a children's stop-motion cartoon aimed at toddlers. This is a variation of the fake book cover you could use to disguise your book to trick parents into thinking you were reading something wholesome. The Lemony Snicket narration in both is also a wonderful setup to the writing style of the books. And yes, it's hard to choose which one is better because they both have different strengths. Jude Law sounds like how a lot of people probably imagine Lemony Snicket sounding. Civilized, but melancholy about the sad tales he has to report.
If you wish to see a film about a happy little elf, I'm sure there is still plenty of seating in theatre number 2. The movie you are about to see is extremely unpleasant.
Even the name Lemony Snicket sounds like a Hogwarts character, and Jude Law played a character in Hogwarts. Patrick Warburton's narration is just as melancholy, but he also has one of the most unique ways of speaking. Nobody really talks like him, which yes, may not be what people imagine when they read the books, but that can also be what sets the stories apart. The fact that it does literally have a unique voice that doesn't sound like any other.
I may have acted a bit standoffish.
The word standoffish is a wonderful one, but it does not describe Count Olaf's behavior toward the children.
Law's voice suggests calmness, where Burton's voice suggests caution. While they're both good, I do think Burton's weirdly matches better. Both also incorporate a timeless feel, giving the appearance that these can really take place in any time period. But still, the gothic world they inhabit is uniquely one of a kind. But hold on, contradictory me searching for a segue. If the show is better, does that mean the movie does everything right, but the show just does it stronger? Well, that'd be like saying I know how to gracefully lead into a commercial break. So yeah, even I, a fan of the movie, have to admit, there's a lot of clumsy moments with it. For example, despite how well they got across certain characters in a short amount of time, there were several that I wanted to see even more of. Before I discovered there even was more of them in the book. Olaf's minions, for example, are all played by great actors but are given almost no time to shine. Honestly, you could have just written them all out and not miss a thing. Other comedic greats like Catherine O'Hara and Cedric the Entertainer are given little to nothing to do. I actually forgot they were even in the movie until I rewatched it again this year. I originally thought Dustin Hoffman was in this because the twins who played Sonny were named Hoffman. Like, I don't know, maybe he was related to them and this is an in-joke. But I couldn't find any proof of that, so there he is. Again, I have no idea why he's there. There's one or two jokes that are a little shaky too. When Streep's character is afraid of impractical things that can kill her, they later all seem to happen as her house collapses. Because of the film's mysterious tone, it was hard to tell if this was hinting that she could predict the future or if it was all just coincidence. By the time you get to the end, you realize it was all just coincidence, but the joke's already forgotten at that point. I don't know, maybe I'm the only one who misread that. This is another nitpick, but I really don't follow this narration.
All the witnesses agreed. The sound they heard next was so shocking, it still haunts them to this day.
I get the idea, you're building up one thing and delivering another, but why would a baby's laughter haunt them? There's a lot of bigger details that seem confusing too. Like Olaf is sentenced to be punished with all the things that he did to the kids, but his sentence is overturned? I thought maybe we were gonna see it was a jury made up of his minions, but it's done off screen, so it just comes across as an awkward epilogue. I remember watching it with some friends and they were asking how is his sentence overturned if he already acted them out? But I had to tell them I think the idea is that this is what would have happened if the sentence wasn't overturned. I think. There's another bizarre fake out where Mr. Poe acts like he's taking the kids to a special place.
Perhaps there's time for just one last stop.
You see them get back to their home fully restored, only to reveal it was them remembering it like it was. Okay, I get them being nostalgic and imagining it was put back together, but if that's the case, what the fuck, Mr. Poe? Oh, I have a special treat for you, the place where your parents burned. Jesus fuck! Maybe the idea was he knew the spyglass would be dropped off there, which would possibly connect to all that secret organization stuff in the other books? Which, was he a part of that? Even if not, that's quite a coincidence they showed up there just as the mailman dropped that off. And the last big complaint, I guess once again, is Carrie. And I'm actually not talking about his acting this time, but the fact that one of the reasons Sonnenfeld left was he felt the producers wanted to make it more about him being the bigger star than the kids. And yeah, I'd be lying if I said I didn't see what he was talking about, but again, I think these kids really do carry the story, and I did want to know what was going to happen to them. I think Carrie just acts so big as the character of Olaf that people think he's trying to steal the show, but it's kind of like how a lot of critics at the time complained that Batman '89 should have been called Joker because he was in it so much more. I don't know, just like in that film, I think the heroes and villains are in it the appropriate amount, they just have different ways of expressing themselves. One more quiet and reserved, the other big and bombastic. Well, yes, I guess a lot of those problems can make big ripples for people, it never was a big deal for me. At least, not enough to ignore the really good stuff the film had to offer. Like I said, the movie's not perfect, but for all the people saying the series is light years better, I still see them as very similar. I do like the show better and highly recommend it, but aside from having more time, the only mind-blowing difference I'd say is the subplot with the secret agent parents. And yes, I will admit that ended on such a wickedly mean-spirited twist, it made me appreciate the show on an entirely new level. But still, in terms of a cinematic adaptation made by Nickelodeon glorifying the miseries of a dark and gloomy book series, I think this was a pretty rare kind of a flick. It didn't shy away from the harsher moments, but it didn't ignore the warmer ones either. It allowed you to connect enough with the characters, who all had different yet odd ways of interacting off each other. For God's sakes, how often are you gonna see Jim Carrey and Meryl Streep in a romantic scene? Before the show, this was seen as a flawed but still unique family film, one that you rarely saw marketed towards kids. It's not every day you see a movie shouting, "Bring your children to this film, it's dark and miserable." I mean, what's the closest thing we have today for that, Addams Family 2?
No, I never left, that's how I brought it back, but what I wanna know is where the party at.
Even if you can't remember what you thought of it before the show, think of it as an early blueprint. The two do look alike and have the same person who developed it, so think of this as take one. It doesn't have all the bugs figured out, but it is still a valiant attempt by great talent trying to get to that point of greatness. I know it's easy to point to all the things the show does better, but I do think it's worth looking at again to appreciate the creativity and twisted storytelling. I don't know, what do you think? Did you read the books? If so, what did you think of the movie and what did you think of the TV show? Do you think one gets a bum rap or it's totally justified? I'd love to get the thoughts of people who are much bigger fans of the books. As for me, this movie may not be perfection, but it's not unfortunate enough for me to say it was unfortunate to see. I'm not Nostalgia Critic guy, remember? So you don't have to. And yeah, that's next week.